It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. We set up a new Opperman Report Patreon. I put up 8 hours of new content there every month. I just put up a show there with T.H. Johnson about the O.J. Simpson case. But our archives are always free. You could find them at Spreaker.com. I do a live show there every Friday night. And you go there, and there's a chat room. And if you sign up for free, there's an email notification anytime I put up new content. Our guest today is a returning guest, although it'd be hard to find his previous shows because we believe they've been deleted off the internet. Robert W. Kirkconnell. He's the author of the book American Heart of Darkness, The Transformation of the American Republic into a Pathocracy. And he's really tuned in to what's going on out there, all about the 60s assassinations, and the genocide of the Native Americans, the CIA mind control subjects. One of these guys, too, I mean, we're Facebook friends, and I never feel guilty about, tagging you in my posts and stuff like that because you're such a good, easygoing guy. But tell the audience, who is Robert Kirkconnell?
Vietnam veteran, and probably that right there was the big transformation in my my view of things was Vietnam, because I found with this war and everything that was going on that there was a reality that was totally different from what American people were being told. And this was Johnson, all his lies about we're freeing the Vietnamese people and self-determination and all that. When we were napalming kids is what we were doing, and poisoning our own troops with Agent Orange and all this stuff. And that was my, and it wasn't, there was never really a one thing that was an epiphany or something, but it was just over a period of time that these lies and these myths of what reality is that are programmed into the American people continue to this day. I mean, we're still living with these things, and that's why I brought up all those subjects, the assassinations and all that. What really happened, and what happened in those assassinations, and what has happened really since World War II is a false narrative, and it's really hard to come. Sometimes there are some people on like come on Facebook and say, well, we need to have these wars for the economy and all this. And you want to spend our money going and killing a bunch of little kids so that somebody can profit over dropping bombs, and it's not you, it's some billionaire somewhere in a company? Oh, no, that's not really what it is. But these people that actually believe this, and that's just an example. We're living in a world that we don't understand because it's been hidden from us, and we've been subjected to just constant propaganda. I remember being in the 7th and 8th grade, hiding under my desk because they had us believe the Russians were going to bomb us any minute. And I'm wondering if a nuclear bomb goes off, and I'm hiding under my desk. That's going to work. At 12 years old, when I look back on this, it's actually, I think it meets the definition of delusional.
Let me ask you a question.
And that's where it came from.
And real quick, your book is called American Heart of Darkness, The Transformation of American Republic into a Pathocracy. And by the way, you have a blog talk radio show you do every Sunday called America Heart of Darkness, too, as well. You put out new content every Sunday. But what does the word pathocracy mean? What is a pathocracy?
The simplest I can describe that is a sick government. Pathos, I think, is Greek, and anything that ends in crossy has to do with government. But as in, like, pathology is a study of illness. And I've got a in-depth definition of it, but that's basically it. It has certain characteristics that would be very familiar to you if you click them off. Control and narrative, demonizing people that are not thought of as being part of the team. Again, the kind of things that we have now. We had Snowden and this guy Assange and Chelsea Manning and all that. These guys are being tortured, and that kind of thing, to take people that speak truth, and they're actually murdering these people, and do that. And you notice Democrats and Republicans are all for that on both sides. Not all, but quite a bit. Oh, this Assange guy, he's a traitor. He's not even an American. And these are indications of a pathocracy. And then believing that we have free speech when you take a guy like that is a journalist and jail him over truthing. Chelsea Manning reported she released tapes of little Afghanistan of blowing up pickup trucks with families in them and pieces of little kids flying through the air, and the people doing that laughing. And Chelsea Manning released that because she just figured it was just something that was unacceptable, and ended up in jail over it. That's a pathocracy.
Robert, I got to add to that list Reality Winner. I just had her mom on the show, and Reality Winner's sister just had a baby. There was some kind of hope she would get some COVID release, and she's still in there locked up. And the only thing she did was report that the Russians were interfering in the elections, that now everybody's talking about. She was talking about it before anybody else, and they threw her in jail for that.
Yeah.
When she was working for a private company, too, by the way. She wasn't working for the government. She wasn't a traitor. She was working for a private company with a U.S. security clearance. So she violated an NDA, which would normally be a civil violation.
Yeah.
And sitting in jail right now, rotting away.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Why do you think, though? I was going to ask you. Back in the 60s, Malcolm X and JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, all assassinated by gunshot. But we don't do that anymore. Well, why do you think it stopped? And what are they doing to us now?
Well, I think that they, when they did like what they did with JFK, and they were aiming for high noon to blow the guy's head off in front of the whole world. Sends a pretty strong message. I mean, he was terrified. Not he, but Evelyn Lincoln left the country. That was his secretary.
Right.
It terrified everybody. That is making the statement, you don't run your own country, we do. And this is what happens if you get in our way. And I think that's part of the reason. They wanted to kill him, but I think they wanted to show, especially with JFK, that we can do anything right in front of your face, and you can't do anything about it. And now we're, 60 years or so? I have to do the math, around there. And people still believe that Lee Harvey Oswald fired that shot. And he did not. And there's a mountain of evidence to that. I think they kind of stopped it. One thing is that it's really risky to do something. They really had to go to a lot of effort to cover that up. And it's hard to do. It's not hard to shoot somebody like that. It's hard to cover it up. And you do too much of it, and I mean, they did plenty. Within 5 years or something, it was JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King. I think Malcolm X was in there too. They killed all these guys and blamed somebody else for it, patsies. And it's pretty tough to do, but you keep doing that. It gets, I mean, it's obvious right now, but it gets more obvious. And I think they were able to, and I consider those a coup.
Yeah.
And so they took it over. And I think the Operation Mockingbird and all these things, control of the media and all that, they control the narrative. You remember, and you probably know as much as I do or more about that. But some of the people that, like the Beatles, and the Mamas and the Papas and all these other groups, that a lot of them suspicious deaths.
Yeah.
And that was to control the narrative. There was a time when probably some of these people, like John Lennon, people would listen to him more than they. If Lyndon Johnson said something and John Lennon said the opposite, they believe John Lennon. And they can't have that. But I think they believe now that they control the narrative, so they don't have to. They already overthrew the government. They don't have to do it anymore.
Mm. And I got us all on antidepressants and TV and the internet, addicted to our smartphones. But Robert, you have some new information about the rifle used to shoot JFK?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I think it's a good example of what we think of as being reality that is not, and that was that part of the plot to kill JFK and the planning for it was that a company, let's see, it's Inter Armco, was the name of the company. And it's a CIA front, and this is a company that fostered what we consider, like, if you look at an AR-15 or an M16, they have you recognize that as being an assault weapon of a specific design. They're very similar. And they developed this. I think they started, the first one was an AR-1, and they had AR-10, and they had NATO weapons, and they were they had the external clip, and they had that look, with the sights on it and so forth. And you look at when you recognize that they're similar, and they needed a weapon. The planning committee that assassinated JFK, they wanted a weapon that was very high velocity, small caliber, and very easy to handle and hide. And they wanted to be able to disassemble it. And so the people that planned the assassination, I talked to, and the guy's name was Cummings. He was a CIA operative. He's a CIA agent or officer that headed this company up and pretending it was a private company. It was actually a CIA cut-up. And so they called him and says, look, we need a weapon that does this, and it's easy to handle and light, and we can hide it and all that. And so they modified what was already a NATO weapon that they made. They modified it for that, and that that became the model for the AR-15 and M16 and all the rest of them. And then Inter Armco just flooded the market with these things. After that, and they were in They bet they can make money that's dark money, off the books, and they don't have to go to Congress for it. And also, these things are really handy. If you want to overthrow a country, you can. If you've got insurgents and you know where they are, you can drop a skid of these things. Especially in a country where it's illegal to have firearms, and even some of these dictators that don't trust their own police, and so their police won't have weapons. And you put that in their arms, a couple hundred people, they can take the country over. They can take the capital. They can just go in and take it with these weapons. And so they're a very handy weapon, and they made quite a bit of money on it. And they market it by patriotism. Oh, it's you got a gun, you can stop somebody from overthrowing the government. Well, it's already been overthrown, for one thing. I've got friends that argue, the Second Amendment, if people have these weapons, we can prevent the government from being overthrown. I say, it's already been overthrown, and you don't even know it. Your weapon didn't do too good. And so that's where, and all this mystique about three-cornered hats, and these politicians have run with these signs that have this guy like a Minuteman or something with a three-cornered hat, and they're gun advocates and all of that is total just fabrication. In the Second Amendment and all of it's our freedom and all that, and associate with that weapon when it was used like the same weapon to kill, I think it was 20 kids and teachers and administrators at Sandy Hook. That's what it's being used for. And then wrap that in patriotism, and they marketed. There were lawsuits of the Sandy Hook. Some of the parents, they got together and sued, and I think it was Remington that manufactured that weapon, but it was of that design that came out of the JFK assassination. And they sued them, saying that, and the lawyers came up with their marketing techniques were such that they were using video games and targeting young boys that were so-called at risk to buy these weapons, who end up to be the ones shooting a bunch of kids in the schoolyard. And they deliberately targeted that. And then they got pictures of it with the Liberty Bell, the gun and all this, like it's patriotism. And they know exactly what they're doing with this stuff. And that's how we're living with, in my opinion, the JFK assassination. That's just one element of how we're still living with this today. And it was, 1963.
Robert,
and we don't really even understand it.
Let me ask you a question. In your book, American Heart of Darkness, The Transformation of American Republicans with Pathocracy, you talk about how you feel like a lot of these assassins, like Oswald and Sirhan, Ted Kaczynski, Timothy McVeigh, were mind control subjects. What do you think about these school shooters? The school shooters, do you think they also are somehow being created?
Well, I think some of them are, and maybe more than some. I think there is evidence. Some of these people, the Unabomber was. This is a slightly different thing, but this guy definitely was in a. I think it was Harvard University. They had him in Kaczynski. They had him in a mind control experiment. There's no doubt about that. And there are others, and I think there is a connection there. I'm trying to remember because I had several examples of people that were in mind control experiments.
Well, then why don't you tell us about Sirhan Sirhan? Because I know that's really big on your heart right now because he has a parole hearing coming up.
Yeah, he does. And I wanted to mention before I forget.
Okay.
Well, let me mention that afterward because, you mentioned Sirhan, and everybody says, well, there's pictures of him shooting Kennedy. He did it in front of a crowd. It's a slam dunk. This guy did it. He's guilty. But come to find out, and this is the psychiatrists and psychologists, even the prison psychologists and psychiatrists don't believe that Sirhan remembers any of that. And there was a time, it was a few weeks, where he just plain disappeared. And I strongly suspect that he was hypnoprogrammed and with drugs and things like that, and does not remember even being done that, and that he was groomed to be a Manchurian candidate assassin, Patsy. And the other thing is that he was never, and no witnesses ever put him close enough to RFK to have fired the shots that killed RFK. And the one fatal shot was behind his right ear in the mastoid bone, where it's a spongy bone that a .22 bullet can go through. And assassins that know what they're doing, they aim for that. If they can get close enough to somebody and get up on them and put a shot right there, they've got them. Sirhan was in front of RFK. He was never close enough to have fired that weapon there. The coroner, Noguchi, he was the coroner to the stars and all that. He said that his examination of that was that whoever fired that weapon was behind. It was from behind, and that the powder marks and burns, that it had to have been about an inch, at most an inch and a half away from RFK's behind his ear, that weapon was fired, and Sirhan was never there. The prosecutors in the case said, well, Kennedy was turned around, but none of the witnesses say that. He had turned around, shake a hand, or I think it was a waiter or something, and then turned back around, and Sirhan was firing wildly. But here you have these shots, one of them right behind his ear, into that mastoid bone that was strategically placed. Two others that were from the back that were aimed or directed, the shots would go into his heart, and this is what a trained assassin would do. And you had Roosevelt, Greer, and all these guys tackling him, and he's firing wildly around. There's no way he could have placed those shots there. He was not in the position, and not doing it. So and I'm not the only one. Now, when that case went to trial, his lawyer, who was named Cooper, was under indictment by the same court over something else, and he never challenged any of this evidence. The ballistics expert testified he had taken another weapon identical to Sirhan's, fired it, and then matched those bullets that he fired to the gun that he procured himself that wasn't even Sirhan's.
Wow.
And he presented this in court as a match. The guy was lying. His name was Wolfer. And the lawyer never challenged any of this evidence. And Sirhan got convicted. He never was. It wasn't really even a trial. His lawyer says, "Well, we're not. I'm going to stipulate that we're not even going to challenge that whether or not he did it. We're just saying that he had diminished capacity and these kinds of things. So Sirhan never got a trial. It was presented in court. There was a judgment and all this. But in retrials, he's been denied. The same thing happened to James Earl Ray. That everybody thinks, well, shoot, the thing went through the court and he had a lawyer and all this. But none of that happened. And this is what happened to Sirhan. Sirhan has no recollection of this whatsoever. And he's been under intense hypnosis and all sorts of things.
Yeah, actually, he used to play poker with a guy who was a hypnotist, before he was yeah, can you imagine that?
The whole thing is really bizarre, and that was a real hard one to unravel, and I'm not sure I got the whole thing completely unraveled because it was really difficult. But there was organized crime, the Chicago syndicate that was involved in that, and I know from what the JFK assassination, it was decided at that time to remove Robert Kennedy once JFK was shot. In a committee that was on there once they killed JFK to marginalize and sideline RFK and to take further action if he ever became a threat of being president of the United States. The decision actually was made to kill him when the decision was made to kill RFK, and it was Hoover who took the initiative on, I believe, on RFK, and Hoover hated him. Robert Kennedy. Kennedy made fun of him and he used to just tease him all the time, torment him, and call him names and things like this. And Hoover really hated Robert Kennedy. And the rest of them don't want a Kennedy in there. To this day, you're not going to see anybody president named Kennedy. Because of Robert Kennedy would have exposed what happened to his brother. He knew. He knew how all that happened.
Robert, we got to take a commercial break in a minute, but can you tell that you were saying in your note that Sirhan has a parole hearing coming up, and you want to let people know how they can recommend him for parole. So and then we'll take a break.
Yeah. Okay. If they go on Facebook, and what we're talking about is that Sirhan could really use, this guy's really been demonized, and he has a parole hearing coming up in March of 2021, and he really could use recommendations for parole. I've written letters, other people have too. And if somebody wants to write a letter, and really the gist of this with a parole hearing is not whether he did it or not. And a parole hearing is he eligible and does he deserve to be paroled? And the guy's been in jail almost all his adult life. I believe he's 76 years old now. And there was a murder attempt on him. He's not safe in there. You got COVID. And I've got, and I put on a sample letter of what I did that people could use if they want to, if they would like to write the prison system and the address too. And so it's a pretty simple thing to maybe customize that letter, and it's on the Assassination of Bobby Kennedy site on Facebook. If you go and look for that, the Assassination of Bobby Kennedy, I have that my sample letter on there and an explanation of how to do that and all that. And it's a pretty simple thing, and I really would appreciate it. Sirhan and his lawyers would really appreciate that because it could mean a lot. And so that's we're going to break now.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, too, to go to the archives on Spreaker.com, the Opperman Report archives, and look at the interview I did with Lisa Peace, who has devoted a huge portion of her life to investigating the Sirhan case, and also gave an excellent description of the faults in the conviction. Let's see. Earlier in our interview, you mentioned how both the Democrats and the Republicans are basically on the same team, right? And a lot of people would hear that and say, oh, my God, there's such differences in the libtards and the conservatives and the patriots. But where do you stand then? Are you a capitalist along with the Republicans and Democrats, or where do you land politically?
Probably most people would, read my book and listen to me. They would say I'm probably extreme left wing, but I really don't look at it that way. And you can tell from my books and things. I just report I research in malfeasance in government, and what I want is an honest government. I don't really care if it's so-called conservative, liberal, or whatever. I think maybe if the American taxpayer got their money back in the ways that tax should be used for, and not destruction the way it is now, that's fine with me. I tend to think that we ought to have Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. I tend to think we ought to have reasonably priced or free education, really, higher education. The way Europe does, a lot of the world does. And people say, well, that's too expensive, but you're paying trillions of dollars now. I did some calculations that to kill one kid in Afghanistan, it's costing us $1 million, the taxpayer. And so I really don't think that's the way our money should be used. I'm fine with left wing. That's fine with me. But which has been vilified, along with a lot of other things. But I'm okay with it. I've been a Republican probably most of my life. I'm a member of the Democratic Party, so I can vote against whoever's I don't like in the primaries. That's probably the only reason. I've been a member of the Green Party. That's kind of where. Oh, I did want to mention too that, and I haven't told you this, but I got my second book out. That one that we had trouble pronouncing.
Okay, what is it?
It's volume 2 and it's macrosocial evil in the post-JFK era is the subtitle. And we had fun with the macrosocial. Can you put that in English?
Wait, one more time. That's macrosocial evil in the JFK what?
In the post-JFK era.
Post-JFK era. Okay, and what? I tell you, what are we going to find in that book?
You're going to find what we're talking about right now. And you're going to find the truth about the Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Jones was a CIA operative. That was an experiment to see how you can get black people to kill themselves. And it was a CIA operation all the way. And that one was years of research. That one is really well hidden. Some of the things that kind of interest me is, you look out in the street and we have this homeless all over the place. You can thank Jim Jones and Ronald Reagan for that, who jointly took all the mental patients, people that had emotional problems, threw them out of the treatment centers and put them out in the street, which is a large segment of the population. And that was done in California, and they said, well, we'll treat them in the community, and then they never did that. And so you have all these people that are talking to themselves and whatever out in the street digging through trash cans in the richest country in the world. And that was the model all across the United States that happened. And that was Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Reagan used the People's Temple to take care of so-called mental patients out of Mendocino Mental Hospital as the pilot for that, and says, well, look what Jim Jones is doing with these people, and they're just fine. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, little known fact, that mental hospital you just mentioned, the Mendocino Mental Hospital, O.J. Simpson's mother worked there as a nurse.
I'll be done.
Yeah, I know. It's all a big puzzle. It's all a big puzzle. All the pieces fit. Real quick, though, you mentioned in the notes again, too, that Oswald worked for the Kennedys?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah, and that, let's see, where did I find that? That was the book, The Inheritance.
Okay, I had him on the show. Yeah, I had him on the show. But by the way, to interrupt you for a second, I'd like to have you come back. We'll do a whole show about Jim Jones, okay? And really give it some time, and be prepared on that a specific topic. But yeah, I had the guy, the Inheritance guy. I had him on the show. To tell you the truth, I wasn't that impressed with him. I had him on as soon as his book came out. He's talking about this great information. I really didn't hear what he had. But tell us, what did he have?
Well, he had. I don't know what he said on the show, but he ended up in the possession of this gold watch that was Kennedy's Cartier watch, 18-karat gold, that was on his left wrist when he was shot. It was given to him by Jackie Kennedy, and that along with we were talking about the gun design.
Yeah,
these people ordered. Mercury-filled projectiles, bullets, for this, and this is something that Corsican assassins and others use quite a bit, because especially when you have a high velocity round, when it hits something, the bullet stops or slows down, and the mercury keeps going, and it explodes the bullet so that you can't trace the bullet. And it's certainly going to kill whoever's in there with all that mercury in there and all of that. Well, this was embedded in this watch. Mercury was embedded in this watch that was on his wrist.
Whoa.
Yeah. I don't know if this guy talked about this or not.
No, he didn't mention that whatsoever, no.
He might be one of these guys that just doesn't do too well. He's good with writing, but talking maybe might not be his thing.
Okay, I'll replay the interview for the audience.
That happens a lot with authors. But anyway, that watch ended up. It was embedded with mercury, and it came off his wrist in the Parkland Hospital. Nurse picked it up, gave it to hospital security, and it ended up with the Secret Service, and Robert Kennedy got a hold of it, and it ended up with a Secret Service agent who analyzed things like this and says, hey, there's mercury involved in this, or embedded in this thing. And the guy, I think his name was Bouch or something like that, but he let RFK know this, and he was suspicious about the assassination anyway, so he didn't report that the way it normally would be. He just told RFK about it and says, I got this watch, it's got mercury in it and all this. Oh, interesting. And this watch has this journey that ended up with to be with Fulton. And it didn't do him a whole lot of good because people wanted that watch. And he's a Canadian citizen, and they couldn't just do to him in Canada what they could have had he been in the United States. But his book is about the watch is the main character, and what happens on that. And it ended up in the hands of JFK or RFK Jr., who who bought the watch from Fulton, and Fulton suspected that when Kennedy's plane went down, that watch might have been involved in that. And it's a fascinating book. That's the first book he ever wrote, and it's just absolutely incredible. But I forgot what your question was. It was
Oswald working for the Kennedys.
Oh yeah. He said that. And this, I tell you, Fulton, he's a sharp cookie. It might not have come out, but he is. And he provided evidence in that book that Oswald was undercover working for Robert and John F. Kennedy, and he was reporting to them. But the people that he had infiltrated, these assassins and drug dealers and all this stuff that were after Kennedy, they knew somebody on the inside was telling the Kennedys what was going on, and so they were looking for somebody, and so it limited how much he communicated with RFK. But when the thing of the assassination came up, it was presented to the Secret Service that there was going to be an event that was just like a dry run of an assassination attempt or something. It wouldn't be real. That would happen when Kennedy was in Dallas, and so they were like the Dallas Police Department was told to just stand down on that because we're going to do something that is not real. So don't interfere with that. It's not real. Mm-hmm. And so what's his name there? Oswald. So Oswald thought that this was going to be a false flag thing, and it was a drill, so he didn't want to risk reporting that to Robert Kennedy. And so he didn't. And Oswald was under the understanding that's really what was going on. Was it in the Dallas Police Department, most of the Dallas Police, maybe not all of them, and a lot of the Secret Service. They were told, don't react. We're going to do something here, but it's just a dry run, to respond to an attempt at his life or something like that. We're practicing something.
Gotcha.
And then it went live.
So Robert,
okay.
We're just about out of time, okay? So we've been talking to Robert Kirkconnell about his book. The new book is called Macro-Social Evil in the Post-JFK Era. And the first book is called American Heart of Darkness, The Transformation of the American Republic, and he also has a blog talk radio show every Sunday night. But Robert Kirkconnell, what would you like to leave us with in the next few minutes?
I think what we started with is, we're with these things that we mentioned, and we had some examples of, we had the homeless, we had... some things are almost funny. Is that Jim Jones is the one that started the automatic payroll deposit where your check goes right to the bank, and he had done that just so that he could take people's Social Security checks and all that and cash them without them having it. And he said, "Well, these people are old. We don't want them robbed on the way to the bank or something like that." And so that's where that came from. And all of these things that we talked about, that we see, and this is in everyday life, the homeless, and all of these things that we talked about, our reality is not how that came about and what happened and why we are here now is all, propaganda. And what we believe is largely not real as a society. And this is in doing that and convincing people that they're actually free while you're doing it, this is just incredible that we have this, and I probably will leave it with that our reality. Everybody needs to take a second look at all of this stuff from politics. And some of these books that we talked about need to be read. Not only mine, but The Inheritance, and there's one that makes everybody mad, which is Regicide, that actually is factual. And there's another one that was Mary's Mosaic, that was about Kennedy's girlfriend and what she knew. And a lot of this, people really need to read and listen to some of these people that, and I do this when I'm researching. If the government says somebody's nuts, I know that there's probably something in there that is being hid. And a lot of times I go to the authors that everybody says are there's something wrong with them. And the more they're vilified, I know the more somebody's trying to hide something. That, and when you get a real expensive book, a lot of times it'll have something in there. If somebody says, New York Times recommends it or something, I usually don't pay too much attention to it. And I think we need to be looking at this. Now, a lot of American people are very suspicious now. Some of the polls are, it's less than 10% believe the government, somewhere in there.
Oh,
Maybe
good.
It's a little high.
Should be 100%. Yeah. But Robert Kirkconnell, we're out of time. I want to thank you for coming back a third time and putting up with me, and also too for your referral to your friend there, Brian Wilson, who came on the show, did a great show. And if you can hook me up with any of these authors that you just mentioned, if they're still alive and doing interviews, I'd love you to hand over their contact information if you could. Robert Kirkconnell, author of American Heart of Darkness, The Transformation of the American Republic into a Pathocracy. You could find him on Blog Talk Radio every Sunday night. And the new book is called Macro Social Evil and the Post-JFK Era. Robert Kirkconnell, thank you so Robert Kirkconnell. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Good night.